Yo, listen up, it's time for a tale about a podcast that'll leave you frail. Hard way wrestling coming at you raw, bringing the heat, breaking every law. They drop the truth, no holds barred, talking smack, getting you hyped up hard, calling out the fakes, exposing the lies. Hard way wrestling taken by surprise. Hard way wrestling coming to your city. Nothing but realness, nothing but grit. Going down the gauntlet, making it mark. Hard way wrestling, straight from the heart.
Welcome back to Hard Away Wrestling. I feel like my microphone's like crazy loud right now.
No, you're
Crazy
good.
loud right now.
Microphone's just crazy in general.
All right, well, this is a special edition of Hard Way Wrestling. We are covering the Mr. McMahon.
Mr. McMahon Monday.
It is Mr. McMahon Monday. It's wow. Well, first before. If you're catching this video today, right now, live, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you're at right now, Twitter, X, whatever you're calling it, Twatter, please make sure you go like, subscribe, follow, do all that good stuff. We appreciate it. We got a real nice 5-star review from Evan Lefebvre yesterday. So very cool.
Thank you.
We need more of that kind of stuff. We need more 5-star reviews. I'd even take a 4-star review, but I like the 5s. I like the 5s. But go ahead and tell us what you think. You know, give us some pointers.
Even if it's possible, give us a 6 or 7. Give us a Meltzer.
Give us some Meltzer, yeah.
Oh, give us the Meltzer. Does it
Yeah.
even go that high?
I don't.
Now, listen, I know that we are not Kenny Omega, so we're not going to get a 7-star.
It's
It's
just
very possible
the
we
star
get a
rating.
Brian.
The star rating should just be the 5 stars, and then it should just say Meltzer.
Meltzer.
Just
The
click
Meltzer. That's right. Go click, like, subscribe, and give us the Meltzer. That's all we want. Just give us the Meltzer. In some countries, giving someone the Meltzer might be illegal. All right, so the boys and I, we watched the Vince McMahon doc. Ricky is only up for the first 3, so this is going to be a two-part episode. So we're going to cover the first 3 episodes of the Mr. McMahon doc. Then we'll get we want to know what you think too in the comments, in the chat. We'll get to the chat eventually, so just throw them out there. We'll get to it. I made some notes. If I missed something, you guys let me know. I know Scotty, this is right in your wheelhouse. So number 1 was Junior. So this was early in Vince's life. So Vince takes over I'm gonna go over some quick notes, and then we'll just talk about them. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So Vince takes over the business. He met his dad at the age of 12. Gorilla Monsoon was supposed to take over for McMahon Sr. Vince hated pro wrestling. Hogan was the man. Ventura ratted on Hogan, and Bob Backlund is boring as shit. He's milk toast.
It's the other way around. Hogan ratted on Ventura.
What did I say? Ventura ratted. No, yeah, my bad. Hogan ratted. Yeah, I'm wrestling dyslexic. So, so Vince takes over the business from his dad. He wanted his dad to kind of get out of the way. He wanted to try some new things, and his dad said, "Well, you know what? If you want to buy the business, you buy the business." Vince made him a sweetheart deal. I'll give you $1 million. There are going to be so many installments. If I miss one payment, you keep the payments I made already, and then you get the business back. What a gamble.
Yeah.
What a gamble Vince did.
And let's talk about
Vince Jr.
Yeah, Junior.
Junior.
Vinny Jr. And honestly, if there was one thing, we got to start with that really quick. Vince put out a statement saying that he didn't agree with how the documentary portrayed him. And honestly, that's probably that right there would be the Junior aspect, because he hated to be called Junior. So that probably ruffled his feathers more than anything.
It did feel like a couple times during this, not a couple, a few, 6, 7, 8 times. It felt like they were trying to poke the bear.
Yeah.
With certain things that they were doing and saying. I did not hear medical facility one time.
No.
So.
Nope. But the one thing that we need to talk about on Vince buying the company. Linda is the only one that said it, and it wasn't made clear. Other than what Linda said, is they took the money that they paid his dad out of the profits of this already existing company. All the towns they were running, they took that money out of the profits and paid it back to his dad. That's how this whole sweetheart deal went down. It wasn't just that they, were making payments, out of their own.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but he was running the business for Vince Senior, right?
He took over the business. He ran the business. He's making payments on the business, but that money came out of the legitimate profits of the business.
Now, was there a couple times where he was like close to not making payments? You think?
No.
No.
Because the thing is that Vince Senior already had the business successfully up and running. That Northeast territory, all the towns were established: Boston, Philly, New York, wherever else they ran up there. They were
all the way up to Maine, I think it was.
Yeah, well, I mean
the
that's where
northeast coast.
Yeah, they stopped in like South Carolina or something. Like, I don't know, they weren't even in the Carolinas. They stopped in like
they stopped in DC.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
DC was the furthest south that they would go.
Okay.
Allentown technically was the furthest south, but they promoted events in DC because they used the convention hall, whatever the convention hall is down there, to promote events. But yeah, no. But yeah, that's an amazing fact that, again, it's not always reported correctly. Linda's the only one that talked about it. They're using profits of this already successful company to pay Vince Senior off and buy out all the rest of the shareholders and the partners and stuff like that. So it's pretty crazy. So when we say the word sweetheart, we don't use that term lightly. It was a sweetheart deal for Vince.
So he got the harebrained idea that he wasn't just going to stay in the Northeast.
Yeah.
Vince said, I'm going all over the United States. We didn't even get global yet. We're going all over the United States. We're going to go to Florida. We're going to go to Texas. We're going to go to the Midwest. We're going out to California. He started promoting all over the United States. And there was a deal that was in place with all the different territory people, that, you stay out of my territory, I stay out of yours. If a guy leaves my territory, he comes to your territory, it is what it is, but we don't poach people. And Vince Jr. was like, yeah, I don't think that's going to work anymore.
He basically said, fuck this is the United States. I'll go where the hell I want to go.
That's right.
And not only that, but he poached the talent first. He went into everybody's territories and raided their talent and then started promoting in their areas. So he would come back, and even Bret Hart said it. They would come back into these territories with the talent they had taken and start running shows in those areas with the 4 or 5 or 6 guys that they had that were household names in that area.
I thought it was really cool that they had they would have JYD cutting a promo for whatever Midwest, Mid-South. Yeah. And then they'd show him with on WWF TV or so they would back and forth. Who were some of the talent? Some of the talent that they took.
Hyper on Mid-Atlantic, Slaughter on Mid-Atlantic,
The Hammer.
Huh?
Yeah, Greg Valentine.
Valentine.
Uncle Greg Valentine, by the way.
You better be. I was gonna say you better be lying on that.
No, one. Jake Roberts. You name it. Other time, Andre. The top talent went to Vince.
Yeah,
because he offered him more money. He said, "I'll pay you more money. We're not going to just keep you. We're not going to keep you in a podunk town, right? We're not just going to let you work in this state and this state. We're going to take you all over the United States. You're not just going to be held to this area." And that was like the big piece of this whole thing. It wasn't just the money. It was the fact that they were going to be worldwide.
He wanted to make things global, or at least across the United States first, and expand.
So originally, it looked like Gorilla Monsoon. There was always some tension between Gorilla Monsoon and Vince Jr., which if you ever watched any of the old wrestling, they commentated together. They commentated together. They did I think they did Saturday Night Main Event or whatever together. They were on a commentating crew together. You never could tell that there was so much tension. But Monsoon was originally was slated to get.
He's the heir apparent.
Yeah, he was the man that was going to get the WWF before Vince Jr. came in and took it off underneath him. There was always some kind of something in between. Now, is Monsoon in the Hall of Fame?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Is he? Okay.
Well, and
I know a couple of those guys. They all fell out, and Bruno was one of them. And
Bruno was one, but here's where it gets interesting: is that just like Vince been given a sweetheart deal by his dad, Vince Jr. like he looked after certain guys that his father always worked for. Monsoon was one of them. Arnie Skolin was another. Guys that had meant a lot to. Chief J Strongbow was another. Jack Lanza. So these guys either had jobs or negotiated with Vince to get really good deals. What was it they were talking about? I've been listening to. Yeah, I know you're gonna laugh. Cornette and Last's reviews of the thing after I watched it, so I could see what they had to say and get some of the extra history that's been left out. But if I remember what Last said, they were saying that he was getting Monsoon was getting a cut of the houses and stuff like that as a part of his deal, plus be the full-time job, still working under Vince Jr., plus a whole lot there. I can't remember, there was a couple other things that he got that were like, it just set him up, like he actually made out better than Vince Sr. on that deal where he was he got buku bucks for life.
well, Monsoon was a staple. He was the backbone of wrestling.
Oh yeah. And
before I mean, he wrestled way before I was born, but and I don't know if he wrestled a while, when I was young, when he quit wrestling, but he was, anytime you turn on the TV, when I watched wrestling when I was younger, it was Vince, it was Gorilla Monsoon, it was Bobby Heenan. Those were the three that I remember. And then, Ventura later on and whatnot, but those were the three that I remember distinctly, especially Heenan. I was a big Heenan fan. So
yeah. Oh yeah. Still one of the greatest commentators of all time.
Yeah.
All right, so Monsoon was supposed to get it, but McMahon ended up getting the business. Vince hated pro wrestling. I
found that whole thing like strange that he didn't meet his dad till he was 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of glossed over that. Yes, he didn't meet
like coming from, he said he came from nothing and he didn't meet his dad till he was 12.
Also sexually abused by his mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which really maybe later on in a few of these episodes you're going to see this really.
I thought it was who his mother was with.
No, it was.
Well, he was abusive. The stepfather was abusive. The stepfather was abusive. Yeah. The mother liked Vince
to shit on people.
He liked the genetic jackhammer. So Vince meets his dad at 12 years old. There's a lot of underlining stuff here with the father son all the way through, and Ricky, you'll see it later on. And I don't want to give too much away, but we'll definitely cover this. But there's a lot of father son seeking approval.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
There were parts of this that broke my heart. They really did break my heart. It made me feel for Vince, sorta, and until he raped the girl, but whatever. Yeah. So there's a lot of family dynamic in a lot of different episodes. So you'll see moving forward.
Didn't he say like he had never heard his dad tell him he loved him or he was proud of him until the day before he died? And
yeah. Well, because his dad almost wanted him to fail, Vince to fail, because it was okay, if you think you can fucking do it better than I can, won't you take the business, you run with it? And because he thought that Vince was going to fail. He thought he was going to fail. And then it came down to it where Vince was so successful by taking these guys from the different territories and building his business. And Vince Sr. saw how successful the WWF was at the time. He was like, you know what? Fuck them. And I think those were his words. I'm proud of you. I love you. I'm proud of you. Fuck them.
Yep.
Now, here's where, again, I'm going to play the historian on this because, again, from what I understand, and again, I need to do a little more research on the day Vince died, Vince Sr. died, versus when Vince truly started to become successful at this. But from what I am understanding, that story might be kind of apocryphal, because Vince Sr. died from what I'm understanding, before Vince Jr. really, the success of the promotion really took off after, during WrestleMania and that kind of stuff. So Vince Sr. didn't have the chance to see how successful his son truly was. So again,
But he saw the business starting to flourish, though, right?
he started to see the pickup.
He died after WrestleMania 3, right? Didn't he die after WrestleMania 3?
No.
He died before 3?
He died before 1.
Or 1.
Oh, he did. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The story might be slightly apocryphal. And again, we only have Vince.
Don't be using big words at me. You'll do and you'll clean it up.
There you go. No, it's one of those, and this is where, again, this is the whole series. Yes, you feel for Vince because of the stories he tells, but the one thing that you have to pay attention to, that Triple H said at the very beginning of this, Vince only lets you see what he wants you to see.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there and I'm listening to Vince tell this story, and yeah, my heartstrings were pulled a little bit, but at the same time, I'm sitting there as like, is this? Hello, somebody's calling.
Yeah. Damn doctor's office.
Please
Proceed.
Please silence yourself.
Yeah.
I'll sit the wrong damn button.
No, so Vince, we only have Vince's word on this whole thing. So I'm sitting there, and Triple H's words are still kind of ringing in my head. He lets you see only what he wants you to see.
Well, you could be right too, because there were a lot of times in this document all the way through that Vince would say things to justify the means.
Mm-hmm.
So he would, and we'll get to something here in a bit that fucking struck me in the 3rd episode that I'm still appalled. Him and Stone Cold. I think differently about Stone Cold too after this a little bit. So, but anyway, so Vince is starting to see some success here with poaching of the talent. But his champion was Bob Backlund.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew that in order to become better and more believable, not believable, but more sellable to different areas, because he was trying to sell wrestling to areas now. He needed a champion. He needed a white hot baby face that he was going to be able to build this company around, and enter Terry Bollea.
Well, Terry Bollea, by way of the Iron Sheik. But yeah, no, and that was an interesting deal, and I enjoyed how they kind of how they tried to explain the old foreign menace concept in wrestling. Where
that, and using current events of what's going on in the world with the war and whatnot to make Sheik look like the absolute villain and make Hogan the absolute American hero.
Yeah. And of course it backfires on them in about 5 or 6 years, which we'll get to WrestleMania 7 with Slaughter. But so they explain the foreign menace style, whether it's the Germans or the Russians or the Iranians or whoever,
the Chinese
or the Japanese, whoever we're mad at, becomes a perfect
story.
Perfect story, and perfect
foreigner in general.
Yeah, perfect heel for wrestling. So And then of course, they took the belt off of Backlund through Sheik, and then from Sheik to Hogan, and then all of a sudden now you've got this, chance. You've got from Hogan to, what was it, that year run leading up to WrestleMania 1, Hogan's white hot, and leading into what they decided to do with WrestleMania, and really how they went mainstream.
And Hogan crossing over into the entertainment industry and pulling a Mr. T out to partner with Hogan to build the sales and everything.
Now before Mr. T even came in, he had he told Vince that he wanted to do this movie
Rocky 3.
Rocky 3, and was it Rocky? That was Rocky 1, wasn't it?
No, it was 3.
3.
Because it was him and Mr. T were both in that movie.
Yeah, and it was Vince Sr. he told that to.
Hogan.
Yeah. And Vince Sr. was like, you do this and you'll never work in this business again.
Yeah, so Hogan was like, oh, well.
Yeah. But I think...
Thunderlips.
Yeah, Thunderlips.
Yeah, I almost ordered that shirt the other day because I want that shirt.
that could have been Vince McMahon's nickname, Thunderlips.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
But no, like the thing, and here again, this is me speculating here, but somebody who has who understands the history of this business. I honestly think that, because at that point, when Hogan left Vince Sr., Vince Jr. was not in any position of power, but I think Hogan knew that Vince Jr. would be at some point. Now, and I don't think they ever had like a handshake agreement or any kind of like, hey, if I ever, take over this business, I'll make you. I don't think that ever would have happened, but I think they both kind of, because Vince Jr. was there when Hogan was there originally, so they probably had a chance to talk a little bit, and it just, in my mind, the way I see it happening is Hogan kind of in the back of his mind, I'll go do this other stuff, but when Vince Sr.'s gone, I've got to weigh back in with Vince Jr. Unless of course Vince Jr. honors his father's grudges, but I don't think he ever thought Vince Jr. would do that. And I think Vince Jr. always knew that Hogan was going to be his star. He, that's the one thing. Vince is good at looking down the road. At least he was back then. He was good at looking down the road and kind of seeing things coming. And, he made a lot of giant missteps in certain parts of that, but he still could see certain big things coming. And I think he knew Hogan was that. And it was just, it was all about the timing.
Yeah. Well, that's with anything in wrestling. Honestly, that you could have a guy that's, ain't worth a shit, and then next year he's the champion, right? It's what you make of him, honestly. But Hogan was
Vince had that vision, and they even said during, like, when he would be working commentating, he'd be planning already his next steps and what he wanted to do.
Yeah. That must have been the three machines that were talking.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Ricky hadn't heard that yet. Have you heard that yet about the three machines?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, we'll get into that. Jesus.
Oh God.
What a
I can't remember. I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that's like the fifth. I think that's 5.
Fifth episode. I can't remember.
So
I forgot about that.
Anyway, to round that episode out, Jesse Ventura was on commentary. He was through wrestling. I don't think he could wrestle anymore, right? He got hurt.
It was the this is the story Jesse always told. It was the Agent Orange compound in Vietnam that caused blood clots in his body, and he could not wrestle anymore. Now, again, whether that's true or not, I don't know. It's the story Jesse always has told, so it's kind of the story we go with in wrestling. But he had been out of the ring, but he had gone. He had been somewhere doing commentary, and then got the call from Junior to come up and do commentary on Titan stuff, and got so good at it that they wanted him, like, to the point where when Jesse and Vince had a falling out originally, and they got the Saturday night's main event on NBC. Dick Ebersol, the head of NBC, was like, we're not taking Saturday Night's Main Event unless you have Jesse Ventura on commentary. That's what we want. That's what we're paying for. So they had to rehire him to get him to come back and get him to come back, because I think at that point there had been a lawsuit or something like that. But yeah, no, Jesse was on commentary, and all of it, because we didn't get to the point of WrestleMania 1 really quick. WrestleMania 1, they built that whole thing. Vince, and the one thing that bothered me a little bit is they talked about some of the stuff that Vince did to get money from WrestleMania 1, but they didn't talk about Black Saturday, which still is, I think, is the biggest reason that Vince got the money he did to finance WrestleMania. Black Saturday was when they took off regular wrestling on Turner Networks and put on Vince's wrestling. Because there was as they called it in the day, the Gordon Soley wrestling, the Mid-Atlantic, the NWA, that wrestling, they took it off the network, and Vince had bought the time slot for wrestling on the Turner Networks. Well, nobody wanted it. Everybody complained. They wanted Gordon Soley. They wanted the wrestling. So Vince negotiated with why can't I think of his name? Crockett. Jimmy Crockett in Mid-Atlantic, for Crockett to buy the time slot on Turner, and that was well over $1 million deal, and boom, there's the money for WrestleMania, or at least a good chunk of it anyways. And all the the stuff leading into it, all the publicity, the MTV, getting on MTV, Cyndi Lauper, all the celebrities. So there's good publicity, bad publicity, because you also had freaking they talked about John Stossel getting the shit slapped out of him by David Schultz, which is always still one of my favorite moments in
that's in the next episode, by the way.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
The stairway trial, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because I thought they were talking. Okay, well, anyways. Anyways, they lead up to WrestleMania 1 and yada yada yada. But yeah, and then Hogan and Jesse get on the outs because, it wasn't right.
Jesse was trying to get a union. Trying to organize a union. And then Hogan being Hogan, he went and ratted him out.
That doesn't work for me, brother.
Vince got rid of Jesse, so.
Well, it wasn't that he got rid of Jesse. He told the whole crew, if you go to this meeting that Jesse's organizing, none of you will have jobs on Monday. So, yeah. But
there was a lawsuit there too, right? Wasn't there a lawsuit? Yeah, he owed Jesse money for figures or
royalties. Yes,
royalties. Yeah.
Yes,
so.
That was the lawsuit, and then it wasn't until '90s, I think it was, that Jesse had figured out that Hogan was the snitch, because there was another lawsuit that Jesse had filed, and then that one is under deposit or under oath. Vince revealed that Hogan was the one that had gone to him and said, "Yeah, Jesse's organizing a union and stuff like that." And
that's his boy.
And that's
his boy.
God.
All right, so that pretty much covers episode 1, Junior. Again, if you haven't watched this yet, please go check this out. This whole thing is.
Say a couple things very quickly before we move on to episode 2. But the one thing I will say to anybody who's a casual wrestling fan, go ahead and watch this. Because Brian Last put it best. This is not for the wrestling fan, because for the wrestling fan, those of us who watch it, to me anyways, I watched it, I'm like, okay, I can see some of the history they left out. I can see some of and I can see some of the edits, not just like the edits and not just the video editing, but the way it was, edited to tell a certain version of the story. So whether, it was, pro WWE or anti WWE or any of that kind of, you could see how they manipulated certain things. So it doesn't, for any of the casual fans, go watch this, because it really does. It's not complete and it's not comprehensive, but at least it gives you a general idea of who this nutcase is. If you have no idea, or just kind of always, if you watch the show but never really understood,
So I don't even say this because I'm not just a casual fan. I watch a lot. I forget a lot of shit too. I mean, there's just so much wrestling information. I mean, the fact that you're able to keep it all in your head with that hairline of yours, I don't get it. But
it keeps all the knowledge in.
Is that what it is? Everything's leaking out of my follicles.
Yeah.
So, but even for the casual fan, there were some things I learned over these 6, not a lot, but there were a couple of things I was like, I didn't know that. And we'll get to one of them's in the 3rd episode of the Montreal Screwjob, but we're gonna move on to number 2, the steroid trial. WBF fails, right? WBF fails. Jimmy Snuka's murdered his girlfriend, and we pretty sure that Vince helped cover it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And Vince makes a face. I don't know if you guys saw this when after everything went down. Well, we'll get to that, but Vince makes a face after putting a PSA out there about saying this will be a drug-free company. I don't know if you did you catch the face?
Yeah.
Did you catch the face?
Talking about
like, anyway, so World Bodybuilding Federation was something that Vince was trying that put together. It was basically bodybuilding with a little bit of WWE flair to it. I guess I never watched any of it. I don't remember any of it. I'm sure it was like the XFL where people were like fighting back and forth and arguing and stupid shit on the back of their jersey like he hate me and which ended up, I think he played for the Packers.
Yep.
Didn't that guy play for the Packers eventually?
Yep. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he did.
I think he was a corner. Like he was like a corner for the Packers. Anyway, steroids ran rapid through. If you looked at some of the guys that were brought in, your JYDs, definitely your Hulk Hogan. There wasn't a dude in who
Warrior, Rude, Savage.
Any guy that was brought into the WWE, the WWF at the time, they were on the juice. I mean, they were big boys. There was no little dudes.
Yeah, Bulldogs.
Yeah, all the yes. I mean, you name it, they were on it. And how did that come? How did that come to fruition? Where they ended up on trial for steroids? It was because of the deaths, or
no? It was
that was a reporter, wasn't it?
Well, okay. So it's hard to trace.
Wait a minute! It was Phil Mushnick.
Yeah,
it was that prick Phil Mushnick. Boy, he hates Vince, doesn't he?
But here's where it's hard to trace the timeline of this because someone, and again, I don't know if it was Phil Mushnick that got the tip on Zahorian, the doctor, or how.
I think it was. I think Mushnick said it was him.
I know he said the thing to me that made me laugh hysterically was like, because I think Vince said something about he was feeding information to the government, and then Mushnick just comes out and said, "Yeah, I was an FBI informant."
Yeah, he was informant. In New York, I'm not sure that's something you want to run around and saying.
Yeah, I don't think you would.
I don't know if that's a good idea. You might end up in a dumpster or something,
or
the bottom of
the East River in cement shoes.
Right. You'll be the only one knowing where Jimmy Hoffa's buried.
Yeah. But yeah, so like Zahorian goes on trial. They get a tip about Zahorian selling drugs to the wrestlers, and it wasn't illegal and they made this distinction. It wasn't illegal to
He was the doctor. He was their doctor. He cleared them. He prescribed them medication, whatever. And occasionally sold illegal steroids.
He was the state athletic commission doctor.
Right.
And the thing that they made a point of saying was that it was not illegal to sell the steroids. It was illegal for the doctor to prescribe and then sell the steroids.
Right.
So that's where Zahorian got into trouble. And then when it came out on his trial, names were bandied about. A lot of wrestlers testified in Zahorian's trial. And then I don't know. And again, somebody, I don't know if it was Mushnick that put a bug in people's ears in the district attorney's office or whatnot, but they got a bug up their ass that McMahon was responsible for selling and distributing steroids in the WWF at that point. So they decided to indict him, put him on trial, and all this stuff. And again, the case was like paper thin weak. Like you could poke holes through every single argument the defense or the prosecution made. And
except for they had a star witness that they thought for sure that this was star witness was going to turn Vince in. It's going to have all the information they needed on Vince. And Mr. Balea did what he does, he does.
Yep.
He
played one side off the other, and boom,
Yeah. So,
but that was the interesting thing was, and like I said, the case in general, like even without other people poking holes in, like what's Vince's lawyer?
he just retired.
Yeah, I know. My brain
years ago.
With his name.
It's not Stephen P. New.
No, it's definitely not.
It's not Stephen P. New.
No.
Go ahead. I'll find it. Go ahead. Keep on.
But no, his lawyer had they had a lot of outs in that case, and even without Balea Hogan screwing it over and whatnot, there was no chance that Vince was ever. I mean, they were concerned. Don't get me wrong. They honestly thought that maybe they would go, he would get busted, and get convicted and stuff like that. But once they kind of saw what was going on and the evidence that the prosecutor had, there was no chance that Vince was ever going to go down for this because they couldn't substantiate the dealing. They couldn't substantiate the Vince, and even Tony Atlas, who, by the way, there were a couple of stars in this whole thing. The Talking Heads, Bret Hart and Tony Atlas were hysterical in this.
What? Yeah. Well, how is Tony Atlas was even around for most of this, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, that is correct, because he was in there from 82 to 85, and then he came back in 91, if I remember correctly.
He said he was taking steroids long before he met Vince.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the funny thing was, he said at the end of that whole trial part of it was, did Vince ever tell us to take steroids? No. I think he said no. Vince didn't tell us to take steroids. We took them of our own volition.
I liked it. Hogan was like, I never took steroids ever. He went on Arsenio Hall, never took steroids. And then they cut to who was it? Was it Tony Allen? Who did they cut to that they was like, yo, I injected him.
Billy Graham, superstar Billy Graham. Yeah, I injected him personally and all that kind of stuff. So no. Yeah, it was a bullshit thing though. They couldn't get him on it. And the other thing that I absolutely laughed at, especially because of the modern day events that have gone on, they talked about how Vince's neck brace might have been a work, because I forget who said it, was like, it wasn't a surgery he needed. He didn't need that neck surgery.
Trying to make it a pity case.
Yeah, and they talked about how people have used neck braces as work business, and the only thing I could think of was like they doing. And I was like, oh, please say they're going to cut to like some of the footage of Tony Khan wearing a neck. I would absolutely die laughing if they cut to Tony Khan wearing the neck brace. I would love this, because not only are they burying Vince, but they're burying Tony on top of it. It would have been great. And the funny thing was, and we'll get to it later, I do find it
Jerry McDivitt.
McDivitt, thank you. I don't know why my brain can never come up with that name. Something that struck me interesting that we will discuss later on. This is not a WWE production. This is done by Bill Simmons and the guys that 30 for 30.
Yep.
So they are not contractually bound by not using opponent stuff. But later on, they did talk about very quickly and very briefly with like a 5-second clip of AEW.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
which I thought, like I said, I know it's not WWE production, and I know they don't, but I still find it funny that it's like I could have seen them, especially in the later stuff and as they got in the more modern era, using bits and pieces of AEW stuff to kind of show different aspects of them. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, the steroid trial was interesting. What else? I can't remember. What else did they talk about in this episode?
Well, they also told they had there was a lot of things that besides that they had to shut down the WBF because of the steroid stuff and all the talk. John
The
Stossel
Ring Boys, wasn't that part of that as well?
was that part of the was that part of this one or part of the episode
I
one?
can't remember if that was.
No, that was
No, that was. Was that 2 or 3?
I didn't write it down either way.
well
Because they touched on it. I don't know that they went into like super great detail on it.
they talked some about, and I can't remember if whether it was 2 or 3 either. But yes, they talked about Stossel, which, like I said before, is still one of my favorite pieces of footage. Watching David Schultz just slap the teetotal shit out of freaking.
Let's back up here. The Ring Boy stuff. This is like this was like the beginning of what we see a lot with Vince. Firing they got rid of all the people that were involved in the Ring Boy thing. And then they brought them back. Some of them back.
Well, they only brought one back.
Pat Patterson.
Pat, but this is like a theme. Like Vince has always been about the money and the what's going to make him the most money and that kind of stuff. And if Pat Patterson was going to be the guy who made him that money, he was going to bring him back. If
Sky's frozen.
oh no, he touched it. He's frozen. This is such a great. He's gone. He's gone. Ice pack died.
Yep.
But there were a lot of people. There were a lot of people over the years that there he is. There were a lot of people over the years that Vince they either left the company or he got rid of them and they talk shit about him or they went on trial. They went on trial against him. And then he ended up bringing them back anyway because business is business. He doesn't ever take anything personal, or he just, I don't know. There is a block there. There is something there with Vince that
Well, he even said it in one of these episodes, like, was it necessarily good for the business as a whole? No, like I forget which scandal he was talking about.
Yeah, which one?
But he said, was it necessarily good for the business as a whole? Probably not. Was it good for my business? Yeah. And that's where his head's at. If it's good for my business, then I'm gonna do whatever it takes to either keep the subject or the person around, or I'm maybe have to kind of move them to the back burner, but they'll come back eventually. Or hey, I'll fire them now. It's business, no big deal. But if I know I can use them later on, I'll bring them back. So
John Stossel was a reporter who was in the back. They allowed him in the back. I don't know if he was asking way too many questions.
He was out to prove wrestling was fake. That was exactly what his goal was. Because he would ask he specifically, you even heard it in the interview. They had part of the clip of him talking to Hogan, and he's like, "Do you use a blade to cut yourself?" and stuff like that. And Hogan's like, like on the surface, he's like, guffawing at it because like, no, why would he do it when he's got gig marks on underneath his bandana? But because he said he just gigged a few days earlier.
Yeah.
But but then and the funny thing was, we find out that in this whole thing that Hogan is a stooge. Because the whole
we just found this out during his documentary.
No, I mean, but it's just funny because everything that he said, like when he talked about Ventura, I ran straight to Vince. When it came to Stossel, I ran straight to Vince. And the Stossel thing, I'm glad he stooged on that whole thing because that, but at the same time, Hogan will tell on anybody.
Well, Vince must have went in the back and said, "Listen, there's a reporter out there. He's asking a lot of questions. Man, I wish somebody would just kind of take care of that." and Dr. D was like, "Oh, okay, I'll do it, Vince." He was out there, Stossel was asking questions, and he said, "Oh, you think this is fake?" Smack. Like the first one, I know knocked the shit out of him, and I think he was like sort of shocked, and then he hit him again, and it dropped him.
Yep.
Did he
Busted
say
his
like
eardrum.
drum up? Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
How did I not lose my microphone right there when I said
Yeah, I was about to say.
So he says, because he claims that he lost part of his hearing and stuff like that.
What?
After he got the $1 million settlement from WWE, all of a sudden his hearing is all of a sudden still is working fine now. All of a sudden.
That $1 million buys nice hearing aids.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, then that was going on, and then they had Hogan and Mr. T was on Richard Belzer's show, and Belzer was talking about putting wrestling moves on, and I guess he was talking about it being fake also, and he had Hogan put him in a front face lock, and like Jack Perry, Belzer passed out, fell down, smashed his head. After he woke up, he was like, "Oh, we'll be back right after this." And when he turned around, there was blood all over his jacket,
all over down the back.
Yeah.
So that Vince was pretty mad about that, because all this stuff going on with the steroid trial did not look good for WWF at the time, and so
they got Hogan out there choking out like talk show hosts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, somebody was yelling, "Go ahead and cinch it in," or something. Go ahead and just give it a little bit more.
Well, no, it was like Hogan looks over at T and is like, "Hey, what do you think? What do you think, brother?" And kind of T gives him the nod, and like if you time it, you can tell Belzer's only in it for 6 seconds. Okay.
Oh, it doesn't take long.
3 seconds. But here's the thing: 3 seconds was uncinched, and then the other 3 seconds, you can see Hogan when he grabs his wrist in that move. And tightens it down, then he's out like that. But there is also a key point to that, because, and again, thankfully, I love having other people who know more of the history than I do. At that time, Belzer was known for having half of Colombia running through his veins at that point. So it like where it probably would have taken about 12 to 13 seconds to choke somebody out normally. It only took half that time for Belzer, because he's already.
It doesn't take that long. It really doesn't.
Well, I'm just saying.
Once you put the pressure on that car, that's it. You might have 5 seconds, 6 seconds. You're snoring. So yeah. So the next episode, and the last one we're going to cover today, is the Montreal screw job. And here's why I learned something here. Okay. So we all know about Bret Hart. For years they said it wasn't real. Yep. It was a screw job. It was legit real. There's no getting around it now. Even though Vince keeps saying Bret screwed Bret, it was Bret's fault that this happened. Bret was going to leave. Vince couldn't afford Bret. Vince said, "Hey, I'm going to pay you this much money." Then come to find out, he couldn't pay him that much money. He said, "Listen, I can't pay you this. If you want to leave, I understand." So Bret was leaving. Bret was absolutely going to leave. And they were looking for a way to get the belt off of him. It happened to be in Montreal. Bret didn't want to do the job.
Yeah, he didn't want to do it in his home.
Didn't want to do the job in Montreal, which makes sense, right?
He didn't want to do it in his hometown, and he didn't want to do it.
Sean.
Yeah, well, he hated Sean. So,
yeah.
But he didn't want to do the job, and then Triple H said, "Well, fuck it. If he won't do it, we'll do it for him." So,
okay. And again, for those who might be interested, there's 2 alternative viewpoints on this. Not alternative, but two different people who said the same thing, I should say.
Well, there's been multiple people. Yes, go ahead.
If you go back and watch, and for anybody who also wants to understand a little bit more of wrestling history, I guess you could say, go watch Dark Side of the Ring. Dark Side has covered the Montreal screw job, and in there, not only Triple H has said it, and I've seen Triple H in multiple interviews say him and Sean were the ones that told Vince, just take it off of him. But there was one other person that said the exact same thing. Any guesses who that might be?
I don't know, brother. You tell me.
James E. Cornette. In one of and
Hogan said he was part of that too. I heard Hogan say that one time too. He said, I told Vince, brother, this is how we're gonna do it.
if he was that's interesting considering he was in WCW at the time. But no, like if you watch Dark Side of the Ring, Cornette talks about how in one of the writing meetings was they're getting ready for Survivor Series. It's like, Vince, just take just double cross him. Like literally, just if he ain't gonna do business, double cross him.
But didn't Dark Side of the Ring, they were saying that like it was only a couple people who knew. It wasn't like the whole locker room. It wasn't.
No, but
it was Vince.
Taker knew as well. But didn't Taker offer to be the one to do the job for Brett?
Yeah.
Or that was one of the people Brett wanted to do the job for. I mean,
yeah, I don't think Undertaker knew what was going on.
I heard something at one point.
Vince, Shawn. Shawn said he didn't know that.
Or maybe it was because of the feud between Brett and Shawn. Brett had said in like a past interview or something that he would have rather have did the job to Taker than Shawn. That's what it was.
I think that's more what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like the only ones that knew were basically Vince's inner circle at that time, which were the writing team, Shawn, who was the champion, and Triple H says he was there, so I don't have any reason to doubt that, but basically that was the only. So it was like Pat Patterson, Cornette. Russo wasn't there at the time, so Pritchard. Yeah, Patterson, Cornette, Pritchard, Shawn, and possibly Triple H. Again, Triple H says he was there, but those are the only ones that knew what was going on at that point. So, but yeah, I just find it interesting. Like, Triple H, and of course they didn't get an interview with Cornette, so Cornette didn't have a chance to say his piece. But if you go back, you can find it on YouTube. There's an omnibus series about the whole Montreal screw job, and Cornette even talks about it there. So on the Jim Cornette thing. Yes, I know I'm promoting another podcast.
Brett loses the title to Shawn. Starts a melee. Brett spits on Vince. A pretty good spit shot, by the way.
Yeah. He said he got me right in the eye.
I was foaming at the mouth.
Even Vince says, "Damn, that was a good shot." Like that. I thought that was funny.
How the hell did he hit me? He got me right in the eye.
So Vince said that he knew that he was going to have to talk to Brett later on, and he knew that if he went in there to talk to Brett was going to hit him. So he prepared himself. He went in there and he said Brett hit him, punched him in the temple. Brett tells a different story. Brett said that they locked up. There was an opening, and Brett threw an uppercut. And I've heard this story a couple times. So Brett threw an uppercut, and it hit Vince square hit him square, knocked him down. I don't know if it knocked him out.
Yeah, he said he was laid there like a starfish.
Yeah. So,
and again, that's
where that neck brace came in.
Yeah. This is why I love Brett in this series, because Brett, really, he does not care. Like, he shot off at whatever he wanted to say, and he's
an artist.
Yeah,
huh?
He is.
Yes,
he's an artist.
He is an artist. That is.
He's a kook.
Huh?
Yeah,
that was funny. That made me laugh.
He's one of my favorites. Yeah.
He kept saying about how I used to be able to do this, and I was this, and and I was an artist.
Yeah, I was an artist. Yeah.
You're cuckoo. It's shocker that it's Brett turning a story about someone else into Brett. It's just that's what Brett does. So, so he ends up. Of course, Vince said he punched him in the temple, but Vince has a black eye later on. So. I don't know how that temple.
He also said he was seeing stars for days.
Yeah, so Brett got him. So Brett leaves, goes to WCW. What else?
They got the curtain call.
Very quickly, going back to the very beginning of the episode, the thing that I thought was interesting was how they talked about the original WWF Screwjob, which was Wendy Richter versus Moolah.
Yeah.
That was my next one. This was the one that I didn't know. This was the story I didn't know.
Yes. Now again, Vince, he wanted her signed. She wanted more money, and like she still had the belt at that point. So she would not. She went out to the ring without having signed a new contract. So Vince grabbed Moolah and said, they threw
Get under a hood.
Yeah, they threw the Spider-Woman costume on her and said, go out there and small package, cinch up on it, 1, 2, 3, and we'll get the belt off her that way. And now the only part of the story that other historians do not believe, and Cornette said it the best, but they don't believe that Wendy Richter didn't know it wasn't Moolah, because they thought, like, with her style, her the way she moved in the ring, and the fact that she had trained Wendy Richter how to wrestle.
Right.
And then of course Cornette even put it even funnier, like, and how do you not recognize that satchel ass on friggin' I popped over. That was
But I didn't know this. Ricky, did you know this story about Wendy Richter?
No.
Yeah, I didn't either. This was new to me, and I was like, "Oh my god, the first screw job."
Yep, the very first screw job, Vince's very first screw job that he ever had to have.
This one was this legal one would turn into illegal screw jobs.
Yeah,
later on. So, but yeah, that when I said earlier about even people who watch wrestling as much as we do and watch just about everything, and I can't remember everything. Things jog my memory. I've never heard this story ever. Did not know that.
Yeah,
and she was Hulk Hogan hot too.
Yes, she was.
Yeah,
and it was a time when, like, because this was in the mid '80s or like mid to late '80s, women's wrestling was not good. Like, it's not like it is today, where for every guys match you have a girls match. They're like, it was an attraction to have the ladies out there. Like, even through the '90s, there was only like 3 women in the entire roster of the WWE. It was like Bull Nakano, Lunder Blaze, and I forget who the other one was. There was always a third woman. But anyways, long story short, like, women's wrestling in the '80s was not anywhere near what it is today.
That's why it's so hard to remember this happening.
Yeah.
Or even knowing that it happened.
Yeah. But it's, Moolah had her troop of girls, and Richter was a part of it, but she had kind of gotten not sideways with Moolah, but she had kind of
Moolah got sideways with all the girls because she was taking money from them, and so that was just Moolah. So
yeah,
that's for another day for sure. But
yeah,
the Wendy Richter story threw me. Didn't know that. And then Rita Chatterton. They cover Rita Chatterton here, and I don't know the whole story about Rita. She was a referee. She's a female referee. And Vince made some advancements on her. One of the comments that Vince made was, it wasn't rape. It was consensual. It was consensual. But if it was rape, the statute of limitations is over, right?
Yeah.
You're like, God damn, Vince.
Yeah.
How do you say something like, as a person?
It's a theme.
Yeah.
It's a theme.
Well, and then again, at the end of this episode, there was a great little addendum to the thing that said, because of a reversal of the law in New York about statute of limitations, Rita Chatterton was able to sue the WWF and Vince McMahon, and they settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. So she got her comeuppance. She got whatever she was due for whatever Vince may have done to her.
Right.
He jackhammered her.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's just, but that whole situation, and like when the whole, and we'll get to part 6 later on, but when the whole, because we discussed it when the whole Vince allegations first came out, and you know, I threw the name, Brian and I threw the name Rita Chatterton out there because in our heads, we've heard this story for so many years. And again, it's not that we didn't believe her, but again, there was so much ambiguity, and there was no real defined. It just the story just didn't always make sense.
Well, the internet wasn't the internet like
And-
it is now, right? I mean, it's a lot of stuff was hearsay back then. Things. It didn't word traveled, but it didn't travel like it at light speed now, right?
It's not instantaneous the way it is.
And by the time it gets to this person, it's like a game of telephone. But now the internet is forever. So the internet, you put a dick pic of Scotty out there, and it's fucking everywhere. I mean, it's already everywhere now, but
But yeah, but with once all the new allegations against Vince came out, I was thinking, I was like, wow, there's probably then more validity to this Rita Chatterton story. And like I said, come to find out, she got her comeuppance because she was able to sue WWF years after the statute of limitations ran out and got a settlement out of it. So good for her. But and as we'll come to see throughout the rest of the series, and once Ricky was able to watch the rest of it, you kind of start to see stuff that's like, as Vince gets crazier, and what was it, episode 4, I believe, he talks about Dr. Jerry Graham. Yeah, it's episode 4 because that's Attitude, if I remember right.
Yeah, that's the next one I gotta watch.
Yeah, but the idea of the crazy guy, and there's the one thing I will say about this whole thing is, as a wrestling person, I would have liked more. I would have liked them to really delve more into and dig deep into Vince's past, because I feel like Vince.
Well, we're gonna get into that. Let's save that thought. Save that thought. We're definitely gonna get into that. Definitely save that thought. Right? This was 6 episodes. This could have been 100 episodes. There's so much.
I will say this much. I will say this, if this were like a Dateline thing, Vince McMahon, kind of thing. If they did a Dateline episode, 1 hour, no commercials episode about Vince for an entire year, 365 days, they still, in my view, could not have broke through all of the stuff that you would ever need to know about this guy, or want to know about this guy, or should know about this guy.
The beginning of this whole thing, he said, "I got stories, but I can't tell you. I can't tell you. Like, there's stuff that he can't tell." And he's old school wrestler. He will never, and he is that guy. He is that kind of guy. He will never come forward. Not enough. There won't be enough. There's not enough money in the world.
I will say,
he just will never.
I will say, I wonder.
Can you imagine the stuff that he's got in his head? That if he said some things, people would be like, "Holy shit!"
I
Yeah.
wonder, again, not that I'm ever wishing Vince will die, but I am wondering, if he ever if something happens and he's on his deathbed, will he make a deathbed confession? Will he just come out and just
Not a chance.
No way.
No chance.
To the grave, buddy. To the grave.
I don't know. I kind of wonder.
It's something he might say, "I love you, Shane. I'm proud of you." That might be it. So
yeah.
Anyway, that's good. Do it here for Hardway Wrestling today.
Hey, you missed the whole curtain call and the whole WCW Monday Night Wars rivalry.
Is that what episode was that?
That was episode 3.
Was that episode 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they just touched on. See, we know about the curtain call. We know about the curtain call. Okay, we'll go. All right, go ahead, Ricky. Let's talk about the curtain call.
Yeah, the whole curtain call thing. This whole thing in general, is very interesting to me. I like going back and reliving through those moments that I got to watch growing up. and the whole curtain call thing, and the clique splitting up, leaving to go to WCW. The talent basically saying they weren't worked 356 days of the year. They got paid more through Ted Turner.
For doing less.
For a way lighter schedule, a lighter schedule.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, Tony Khan. To work exactly what they want to work. That whole thing, and then how the whole Monday Night War started with this no-name guy of Eric Bischoff, who'd been through a announcing tryout in the early 90s and did not make it in WWF. And now he's been head of creative for a year. And now he's starting to pull in WWF talent over to Turner. And he convinces Ted to give him a 2-hour window on Monday nights. And he's starting to pull in more viewership than Vince.
83 weeks.
Yeah.
That's what I call my podcast, right?
Yeah, that's what he calls his podcast.
Yeah.
And the thing that I think was interesting about that is they talked about how Vince doesn't sell. He's nothing, to the point, like, again, they did everything they could to provoke him. And then when he sells, first thing he sells at is freaking Medusa dropping the belt in the trash can. Because he didn't sell Hall and Nash. The only thing that he sold with Hall and Nash is the lawsuit over them using, the
they tried to say that it was Razor Ramon, but it was Scott Hall, and it was Diesel, but it was Kevin Nash, because they were doing the exact same gimmick, basically, just under their real names.
Yeah. Was this the one where he said, he usually doesn't get rattled by this kind of stuff, but some of this hurt his feelings?
That was
they had the handshake agreement, and then the next night he's on.
That was Hogan. That was Hogan.
Hogan.
Yeah, Hogan said he would never. He's going to leave, but he'll never compete against Vince.
Yeah, he'll never.
Yeah, and he got sour with doing the Thunder in Paradise series.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. But the other thing that got me was, and again, they questioned, the one thing I will give the Simmons crew credit for, they called Vince out on the one thing in all those years, because he's always talking about billionaire Ted is trying to put me out of business, this little family run mom and pop business, and the billionaire's trying to put me out of business, when he did the exact same thing in the territory days, and stealing all the territory's top talent, and then running, buying some of them out, because that's another story that didn't make air, is that Vince bought out, and I'm surprised Brett didn't bring it up, but he bought out Calgary, stopped paying Stu Hart. He bought out San Francisco, stopped paying not Garibaldi, who's the karate guy out there in California. I can't think of his name.
Come on, Book of Knowledge.
Huh?
So come on, Book of Knowledge.
Those are all side stories. Yes, there was all side stories, but I get it, the WCW thing and all that, but we try to keep it.
In my opinion, though, this part coming up with the rivalry between Vince and Turner for the Monday Night Wars brought in some of the best wrestling probably that I've seen in my life.
Well, they got complacent too. I mean, they got same thing with recent history with AEW and WWE. They were complacent. They were just doing their thing. There wasn't any competition. Now you got competition.
Yeah.
Now you got guys that making you go work harder, be better, and that was the best thing that ever could have happened.
In my opinion, the Attitude Era is probably the greatest era that I've ever witnessed.
Boy, there's some shit. I don't know.
I love the Attitude Era.
There was some terrible stuff during the Attitude Era. I don't know.
Well, was it on this episode or the next one, Jason? You remember when they talked about, Vince nobody got killed, and then they show.
No, that would probably be under the Attitude.
Yeah, okay. It's under Attitude. Yeah, it's under Attitude. Yeah, no one died. No one died. Choppy pee. No one ever. We don't use guns or knives, but they got a sword.
That
was hilarious.
what was it? Pillman, right? It was Pillman
Yeah,
that had that. Yeah.
Coming with the gun.
Yeah.
So, but we'll
Yeah.
get to that.
We'll get to that.
So,
But no, the thing that they did though, that they called McMahon out on those predatory practices that he used, and then well, don't you think it's a little hypocritical that you did the same thing to all these other guys, but yet when Ted tried to do it to you, that kind of like they called him out on that, and I thought that was good. That actually was like, all right, at least somebody, it's not up to this point they hadn't really ripped into McMahon. It wasn't a puff piece, but it wasn't
no way. It was not a puff piece.
It was not a puff piece, but it wasn't a burial either up to this point.
They didn't have to bury Vince. He was burying himself.
Yep.
Well, yes. And it's true, but at the same time,
I mean, I didn't rape her, but if it was rape.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
is it okay to say if it was rape?
Yeah, tell us you're guilty without telling us you're guilty.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of this, and we'll end it here, but Vince said, Ted was going to put me out of business. He was going to beat me, but he didn't.
Yeah.
So, Vince is something.
He is.
Vince is something. So.
The other thing that I'll say this much too, Vince said at the beginning, nobody knows the real me. And we'll see by the end of it, in my view, that was one of the most honest statements I think Vince can ever make. Knowing what we know now, I don't think like you just said before, like it'll go to the grave with him. Nobody will ever know who the real, there will be, and I think a lot will come out with these lawsuits and stuff like that, but I still don't think we will ever truly know the real Vince McMahon.
One word. Kayfabe.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Who can hold it? Who can hold it longer? Undertaker or Vince McMahon?
Well, I mean, Taker's already broken it, so now it's looks like it's Vince for the longest kayfabe. So, yeah.
Anyway, thank you for joining us for this first episode of Mr. McMahon. We're going to finish this up. The next one will drop here sometime this week. Also, we'll be back. We'll be back probably tomorrow to do a Raw review if you guys are available. Also on Friday, probably around 8 o'clock, maybe a little later than that. You got to work on Saturday, Rick?
I don't work. I got to work Friday night. Saturday, I'm off.
We got to do our Bad Blood. We got to do Bad Blood. So maybe we'll knock that. Maybe we'll knock that on Thursday or something.
Can we do it 7 o'clock?
I have a walkthrough at 6. So yeah, unfortunately. And I won't be back here until probably after 7:30. So it wouldn't be till 8 o'clock. That's going to run right into. So we'll figure it out. But we got to do a Bad Blood review. If you're in the fantasy league, the link is up. I sent it out today. It is on the Patreon page. It's only for paid members. So if you want to join the fantasy league, support Hardway Wrestling, now is the time. It's $5 a month. You can't beat it. That's it. It's only $5. Really,
$5.
You can't beat it. So it helps Hardway Wrestling helps support Hardway Wrestling. We do giveaways and that kind of stuff. By the way, we did 2 giveaways. The one dude already contacted me about the Jamie Hader, and the dude from the Briscoes. Not yet. He has not returned my phone call yet. So, yeah, get on it, bro. What is this guy's name again? Chase Berserker Crux. Okay. Anyway, Chase. He's got his own ring name. I love it. Do you have a manager? Berserker? You have a manager? You need one? Anyway. All right, that's good to do here for Hardway Wrestling. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time.
On the hard way.
Dwarf Dong Sucker.
Terrible.